name's Dave Spooner. I'm with the Whittlin Woodcarvers. This is Whittling Time for WKTV. And in this presentation, we're going to show how a marionette's made. And there is just tons of different ways that people has approached the making of these. The very first mention in history with the marionettes was about 500 BC, where the Egyptians were using them. And then it got kind of quiet until the 15th century, where the Catholics would put on little shows, Bible stories, and they used them, they called them Little Marys. And that's how the name got marionette. So that's how it got its name. And of course, you got different versions from there. With this, I'm going to do this in components. So I've got the leg component, well, I've got the arm components, the leg components, the torso, and the head. The head will come in part 2, but at least I've got something there to kind of show you how it's installed into the torso, which is another component. So if I start with the arm assembly, I'm going to call it, you'll notice that I've got them pinned, and I'm using some temporary pins. They're brass pins. And you'll notice it's pretty tight right there. It's not moving. And the reason why I got the temporary pins in is so I can remove them and start rounding the joint out. And I just kind of cut it like that. And you'll notice that I've marked the pieces so you don't get them turned around. So it's really easy to confuse your direction. And that. So you see they're just rounding that off, and I've got something else right here that I need to address because she's not going all the way. And round that off a little bit. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. And in this case, we got to kind of round that off a little bit because you want to see where it's hitting as you rotate it there. And then once you got that running, you'll see that I've got these witness lines, guidelines, whatever you want to call them. And the reason why I got them, you want to do that full, you want to keep that kind of in the same line. you're going to kind of round that off, and you're going to do both sides. And then, of course, when it's done, you'll kind of take and sand it all down and make it smooth, make it sculptural, you know. But you want to kind of follow that through. And that's another reason why you want to kind of temporary pin. And then when you got that all swiveled, then you kind of go down to the hand. Now I've got it showed where I've got it all made here. Well, the way I make the hand is I start with a blank, and I draw from the pattern on that blank like that, and then I draw it here. So what I'll do is I'll use a bandsaw cut, a compound cut they call it, and when I get done with it, after I cut it, I come up with that right there. And then after I get to that point, I'll mark it out on how she should look. And then after you get that, it's a matter of carving some of that away. And okay, because you can see we've taken that portion out, and already it's looking like a hand. Well, more or less like a baseball mitt. And again, you're going to round it off. And then with the fingers, you'll see, you can even look at your own hand and then see the length of your fingers. And you just kind of mark off which one's shorter, which one's longer, you know, and take her from there. And then after a while, it'll start looking like that. So I'm going to do the same thing with this guy. And kind of round that off. Yeah, let's see how close we can get. Okay, a little more. One thing too is when you round this off right here, you can always taper it right down this way too to the wrist. And of course you got to watch the grain. So this arm is going to be tapered towards the hand. And you just got to watch you don't hit the pin to screw up your knife. Okay, it's just roughly speaking, but I kind of get the idea on how that component is going to take shape. And again, you know, once you've got that carved up, you can always take some sandpaper then and go over it and kind of smooth out your lumps. So once you get the hand assembly or that arm assembly fitting just right, then you can go to your leg assembly. And again, with these patterns, I start with patterns like that. I use a bandsaw, and of course, after cutting those out, you're fitting the tenon into the, well, it's just like a tenon and mortise joint in a way. So, and again, it's the same process. You pull the pin out and you kind of round that off. Okay. Stick that in there. Still a little tight. Okay. Now in the case of this, not only are we rounding off the top of the tenon, we are going to round off part of the base here. I like to do the top here too, because where it goes into the bottom part of the torso, it'll fit a little bit better. With this ankle too, just like the hand, we probably want to taper that down to the foot. Give it a little bit of a, so he doesn't look too blocky. And we're going to take the foot, and whether it's a right or left, and here, where you'll see we're shaping the bottom of the foot, you can get as elaborate or as crude as you want. And one thing I wanted to mention is when you cut out the foot, you want to make sure the grain is running up and down. Because if you go crossways, of course, it's so easy to break that off. And then you're going to kind of shape the foot. Just kind of look at your own foot sometimes and you can see how it's not quite cylindrical. Just kind of shape it whatever. And what I'll do usually is on the bottom of the foot, I put like a stop cut, and then you're going to carve right down to it. Right down to the stop cut, and that'll kind of define where the foot is, where the sole of the boot is, or the shoe, whatever he's wearing. And then round off the back. Yeah, it's still going to be a little blocky, but not too bad. Yeah, maybe we'll round off this top while we're here. He's ready to kick away. Well, then we got the torso. A two-piece torso. And again, with this is 3/4 stock. This is I took 2 pieces of 3/4 and glued them together and cut them. So I got twice the thickness of the body. And also, by doing that way, the advantage is it gives that seam gives you a center line to work with. So in doing that, once I cut that out with the bandsaw, I drill an 1.25" hole with a Forstner bit, about 1.5 inches deep, and that's to accommodate the head. And with the head, I come up with a swivel system that would let it swivel, and then it's held in by a couple pins. Now, most these pins are 1/8 inch, and I use a 9/64 drill bit to drill those because it'll take and accommodate a wooden 1/8 inch dowel stock. Because when you're done with the temporaries, you can take a 1/8 inch dowel stock and glue those in. And I'll cover that here when I get a little further into it. So I drill a 1.25" hole through there with a Forstner bit, and then I'll drill these small pinholes in the side where I can put a pin in there to retain that ball, which is going to hold the head. So again, with the torso and these others, you'll see I've got these witness lines. Again, witness lines, guide lines, whatever you want to call them. And I do it in the front and then the side. And of course, what I'm doing here is I carve right down to those witness lines. And I do this all the way around on both sides. And that. So once that's accomplished, it's a matter of on both pieces. The bottom torso is just basically the only hole we're going to drill in that one is this bottom hole down through here, and this is to accommodate the legs. And just to give you an idea on that, he lost his head. And this is how they're attached. I've got a brass rod going through the side there, and I've drilled a 9/64 hole through the side there, and I've also drilled on the side of the leg too to accommodate this. In this particular case, I had to shim it up with some washers there, and now to attach, when I attached my upper torso to the lower torso, I used like these little eyelets. And I staggered them so I could run that rod through there. And to attach the two together. So when you see this right here, we can just pull them right off. And that. And when it comes down to the, yeah, he lost his leg. Now when it comes down to the arm, to attach the arm, I used a piece of leather about 1 inch wide and 5 to 6 inches long. And how I attached it was I put a screw in the center, just left it loose enough where your arm can swivel, and I attached a screw in the back, screw in the front to hold them in place. And same way with the head. Now, the head, I drilled a hole in the bottom of the head, and now these wooden balls you can get at Hobby Lobby, and in this particular case it's a 1.25 inches. It's already got a hole in there. It's close to 5/8 of an inch. So I just got some 5/8 inch dowel stock and kind of just carved a little bit of lip there. Stuck it in there. We can glue it. And let's see, there's another one right there. That would go for this particular puppet. And again, you know, to hold the head in place, it's a matter of just sticking that pin in there. You can have two pins, 4 pins. This fits tight enough where even 1 pin will hold it, but it'll be a little bit too loosey-goosey, you know. So once you get all that set, it's a matter of sanding all the pieces down, kind of giving it a sculptured look, and you can be as creative as possible. You could get real fancy with it, get real exotic, or you could just get real basic. Now, this guy right here, he's real basic. He just, this I think I did maybe 40 years ago, 35, 40 years ago. And it was the same patterns, but no carving, just plain wood without sculpturing it. And the joints were all put together with eyelets connected together. You can see the way the head is here, but they seem to be a little bit too floppy, you know, and all that. But there's so many different ways that you can make connections and joints and everything else, you know, and they've done just so many different techniques over the years, you know. So is there any questions so far? Yes.
For your pins, you just use brass bracing rod?
Yeah, for the pins, you're right, I do. I use bracing rod, and it's 1/8 inch. It's just the perfect size. And the same way with the wooden dowels, because I'll just take the wooden dowels, and when I pull those pins out, I'll replace them with an 1/8 inch dowel here. And when I replace the dowels, instead of I'll put the glue in right before I sink it completely. So I put it on this end. I don't put glue all the way through because it'll glue your joint right up. So you just want to there, and then once it sets up, then you can kind of carve it back in and hide it, just like be just like these right here. These have got all wooden pegs in there. But I found if I drilled it with just the 1/8 inch drill bit, it just fit too tight and you'd struggle with it. If you go just a size up further, the 9/64, it's just big enough where it'll let it slide in, but not too big where it wouldn't let you glue the 1/8 inch dowel pin in there.
Super glue or wood glue?
Wood glue. Yep. Yes, sir.
The fact is that they are too distant. This is too long. So
Right. It's just temporary.
so
Just temporary. So when you put the wooden dowel in and glue it in, then after it sets up, then you can carve it flush. Yeah, just like these right here.
you have only 8 strings. Anything more?
Yeah, they're as far as stringing them up, I've got some stringing schematic here, I guess you call them. As far as stringing them up, there's a basic setup like this. You know, you got one on the back. You got actually one on each shoulder, one in the back, 2 on the head actually, 2 on one on each leg and on each arm, and sometimes somebody might want to have a little more action, you know, but for starters, I think that's basically what you start with, you know, because you got to be, I tell you what, you got to be really, really, really good at handling those, you know, because they can be pretty tricky. Any other questions? If that's it, we're done. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.